The whole IDP program, the non-sectarian program, was primarily a tool for bringing Israeli experts into places around the world that didn't have political connections or diplomatic relations with Israel. It was a way of introducing the population to Israelis and by extension Jews.
The three primary things that I would say are that we benefit from these non-sectarian projects are strengthening the local community, building ties with the local municipalities and local governments, which in return help benefit the clients that JDC is currently serving. It also enables JDC to be a first responder on behalf of the wider Jewish community.
We always looked at our work at the impact on two levels. One is at the professional levels. Are we doing the best professional work that brings in the end some benefit to a target population that we've identified? And the other goal is building bridges to non-Jews, to other communities, to partners.
We function in some ways as a bridge, and we facilitate capacity building activities here in Israel, and also make sure that Israeli government officials or civil society representatives are represented in activities that happen internationally.
The goal for us was really to create a more positive feeling towards Israel on the part of those people. This is, you know, in the 80s, so it was the aftermath, quite a number of African countries, for example, that had cut off relations with Israel, and also countries in the Eastern Bloc that had cut off relations with Israel from '67 had not yet renewed them.
Maybe past generations would have even questioned using Jewish philanthropic dollars to respond to kind of quote-unquote non-Jewish needs or non-Jewish causes. Here, for a Jewish young adult population today, of today's generation, it's just the opposite, where they would be concerned to be a part of a Jewish organization that didn't also help other people.
So you have a win-win situation. You have, first of all, you treat the population. Number two, you have an access to the local government. Number three, you create also connections between Israelis and Americans, or Israelis and French, or Israelis and maybe Russians.
We began to make very fruitful connections, both in a sense of HR. We were able to actually hire some people from some of the grantees in Russia. We began to map needs overall in Russia. We had access to data. We became a player in the area of children's welfare and children's services, which in my opinion was critical for us to start our children's initiative even within the confines of the Jewish community.
There's a critical connection between our humanitarian efforts and our growth of Jewish service programs. That for JDC to be well positioned in the world of Jewish service and sending more young people to volunteer, and in this movement where we're increasing this, and this is of increasing priority within the Jewish community, JDC is particularly well positioned and in a very strong position to be able to say that we can send young Jews to volunteer in the world, in Jewish communities in Israel, and in humanitarian placements.
In terms of impact, I can point out to very significant progress towards eradicating human trafficking, for example, and JDC receiving also recognition from that, for example, by receiving an award, a prize from the President Peres for our work in combating human trafficking.
One of the things that JDC does well is that it learns, it creates a model, and then it learns how to replicate it and to adapt it to the different regions in which it works. One of the ways that we've done that in the former Soviet Union is with the WET model. The Women's Health and Empowerment Project was created in Bosnia. The model was developed together between JDC and the Susan B. Komen Foundation, and that model was then brought to Moscow and was successfully implemented with a range of partners, including the U.S. government, USAID, two local hospitals, the local Ministry of Health, and one or two of the national health ministries as well in the government. Once that model had been established in Moscow, we have now replicated it to St. Petersburg, and we are looking into the option of taking that model beyond the borders of Russia.
So I see a big potential to those projects, and I believe that they can really tap into the knowledge that exists in the organization and use it.
And as a result, I would say that Israel looks a little bit more humanitarian.
JDC's core competency is a development organization. Whether we are developing small fledgling Jewish communities across North Africa or in the Far East of Russia, we are a development agency. If we want to take our work seriously, if we want to build the capacity of our staff to address the needs of small communities or large communities as a development organization, we must be exposed to what's happening in the development community, internationally and also locally, no matter where we are active in the 70+ countries around the world. That is a demand that can be met by being active in non-sectarian channels.
Tikkun Olam is seeing needs, humanitarian needs of people wherever they are. So, you know, for sure we all agree that if there is a crisis because of an earthquake, of a tsunami or a war, going there is justified. I see also from the principle point of view, from the moral point of view, justification to go to areas depends on the ability and other considerations. If we talk about relations with international organizations, which I am very much for this relations, because we can benefit from them also in the case of Jewish communities or the case of a crisis that we all agree we should go because that's what we are doing, and rightfully we are doing it.
I think that IDP has to be in service of the broader JDC mission and not separate or report from or necessarily even an independent part of.
It strengthens also the local JDC, and it should mesh with the local JDC mission, meaning it shouldn't only be for humanitarian and other aspects, but it should also mesh with what the local JDC mission on the ground is. And so JDC's mission on the ground in Israel is supporting vulnerable communities, and we have a program that supports families with children with disabilities. It's strengthening, it's working both in the local mission and on the IDP mission, and I think that's when it's strongest.
If you look around, and you look around the Jewish world, and you look around the world, and you look at a Jewish nonprofit organization that has the scale and scope of JDC, and you look for an organization that works in overseas Jewish communities, that works in Israel with critical social challenges, that is apolitical, and at the same time look for that organization to also implement humanitarian efforts, you'd be very hard-pressed to find one. And JDC is doing that. And I think that this has critical added value in implementing our core mission. And I think it also has critical added value for the future.
One of the ways that JDC can help strengthen those communities is by partnering with them to do a IDP project that would benefit the wider community.
Within the Middle East program, we invest in professional cooperation in the field of health, but also at the people-to-people level, for example, between survivors of breast cancer. So we have support groups that include Palestinian women and Israeli women. And I think this daily communication between all kinds of barriers, whether they are of a social nature or a political nature, is extremely important. I
have to add that I think there are a lot of things that are critical for JDC's core mission that we don't always get to. So I don't think the issue is it critical or isn't it critical? It is critical. It does have a contribution to be made. I think in making a decision about whether we should get involved and to what extent we should get involved, I think it has to be seen in a broader context. In other words, what don't we do in order to do this? We can't do everything. And I think that there are times where this is critical. I think it's critical, number one, because as a Jewish humanitarian organization, I think we have a message to communicate both to the world and to the Jewish community that while our primary responsibility is to our brothers and sisters, we also have responsibility that extends beyond that.
If we can focus, so we'll have a unique intervention area on needy populations in crisis, and I believe that's the policy of IDP, I think we can bring a unique capacity to the field.
I would recommend investing further in consolidating some of the work we've done.
I would focus on 2 or 3 core areas where we could best bring the JDC professional expertise to bear globally.
I think we have to have realistic goals based on the size of the program that we're, and the scope of the program that we're going into. In other words, sometimes it comes out a little bit bombastic. They are very noble goals. But we have to remember also that the resources that we're giving, whether they're financial resources or human resources, they have to be carefully targeted, and I think the goals be set according to the scope of our involvement and not these larger issues.
In order for JDC to really position itself strongly in terms of saying we can build a Jewish Peace Corps in the world, this is a critical component of it. We can't possibly position ourselves to accomplish that without these efforts through a Jewish lens and through a very focused, priority-driven lens. This is important. And on the other hand, I think what these efforts do for a young adult population in terms of identity building is also important. Being able to bring young Jews to Haiti and have them experience what we were doing in Haiti, and for them to see that these young children that were part of the school that we helped build were actually asking questions about what it means to be Jewish. That's powerful.
There's 3 areas where I think we should invest. In-house expertise and operational capacity so that we can respond in a very short notice to crisis, and you need a certain infrastructure for that. Secondly, invest more in areas that are of extreme importance to Israel. And thirdly, develop expertise that would enable us to better tap into institutional donors. If we do go after large amounts of funding and we do receive them, we need to be ready with a strategy that will help direct us to empower and to really strengthen a lot of the work that we've done over the last few decades.